How do you know when you've reached full fluency in the language that you're learning? Because obviously you cannot learn everything under the sun in your target language because there's just an endless amount of words to learn. So how do you actually know when you've reached 100% fluency? That's probably a level that most people probably will not reach ever in the language that they're learning, just because it's really difficult to do, right? Maybe they would reach like 99% fluent. Um, and the kind of people that do reach this level have probably spent like several decades in a country
that speaks their target language. Okay, but for me, like logically, I think full native fluency, or fine, maybe not even native fluency, but at least full fluency in a language is where you can kind of just learn stuff in the language.
Okay, so new word, you can just look up the definition in the target language in a monolingual sort of way, right? You don't have to go back to your native language to see what the definition is. You can just use like a full native dictionary in the target language. Okay, so for example, like here's like a completely Vietnamese dictionary, right? So it's just Vietnamese, so like all the Vietnamese words,
it just has Vietnamese definitions for native Vietnamese people. So I can't fully rely on this yet. I still need some English translations when I'm learning Vietnamese. But if I were full native fluent, like a full native level of
fluency, then I could probably just rely completely on this dictionary.
I think it just logically means that you would have the capability to also just learn about stuff in general too in the target language. You know, like anytime you want to learn something new, do it in the target language, right? So I think at that point you would probably be 99% fluent, but at that point 99% is basically 100%, right?
The 1% probably just means that it wasn't your first language that your brain developed in, so you're just maybe still some like tiny gaps here and there. But if you're 99% fluent, then you can just do basically anything in the language, I would say. But many people, I say, would reach like 90% fluency in a target language. And if you're like 90% fluent, you could probably live in the country that speaks your target language at that point. So for example, take international students that are living in the United States. They had to grind and hustle for English by taking like the IELTS or the TOEFL. So then afterwards, when they come to the US, they have to marinate and spend a lot of time in the country. And after maybe like a year or two, they're probably fully functional in English, right? So they can live their life, they can go to school in English, but even though there's still things for them to learn, that 90% is enough for them to have a life here. Okay, so I'm not saying like the 99 to 100% level is necessary, but it's just something I'm kind of like thinking about, as in what would necessitate you never having to abandon your native language, right? So for me learning Vietnamese, I was thinking about what it would take for me to never have to use English again for the rest of my life. But that's not going to happen, obviously.